I have to do the what? Right. I think we've got everybody. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation. This is one of the segments in our foreclosure and prevention series for our homeowners associations. Also included in that series, we also do the property tax foreclosure as well as mortgage and reverse mortgage foreclosures. So we'll give you guys a little bit more information about that. But we want to welcome you all today to this presentation. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in this collaboration. Also included, we have the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and on behalf of our presenting partner with Lone Star Legal Aid, today we have Ms. Lauren Masulo, Ms. Samantha Guzman, and Ms. Carissa McNeil, who's going to be providing the information about HOA foreclosures today, or property owners foreclosure. I'm not just going to say HOA foreclosures, but let's see, got somebody else in the waiting room here. But just to kind of give you guys a quick little background, A Month of Service is the collaboration of all of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis. We offer a variety of different workshops relative to asset building, asset protection, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. We decided to collaborate several years ago in an effort to create a larger impact, to reach more people. Considering that we service the same communities, we wanted to try and get as much accurate and up-to-date information out to the community as we possibly can. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities out there that don't know where to go for available resources, available services, or even just don't know who to go to ask specific questions, even if it relates to something legal or something regarding their property or what have you. They just don't know. And we're trying to keep people from listening to the street committee out there. And the street committee is always those ones that are kind of telling you what happened in their particular situation, or what they heard from somebody else or what have you. And then also on social media, there's so many different posts and things that are out there, and advertisements that people are doing that are not necessarily relative to the laws in the state of Texas. So we wanted to make sure, again, that we get the most updated information that's out there, that's available, that's relative to our communities. So whether you're joining us from some other parts of the city, Harris County, surrounding counties, do know that the information that does get provided here is relative to the laws for the entire state of Texas, not just for the city of Houston or anything like that. Also, do know that the information that we do share is for educational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice. However, we do encourage you to reach out to all of our legal service partners if you do find yourself in need of any civil legal assistance. Do not automatically discount yourself and assume that you won't qualify. We do encourage you to reach out and apply for their services. We do have the legal experts that are here that are available to answer whatever questions that it is that you have. However, we do want to remind you that we are recording the session. We also do broadcast live on our social media platform. So we want you to try to keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can, and not divulge any personal detailed information, because we want to try to protect your privacy as best as we can. So don't give us too many details or anything like that. But um, so do keep that in mind. Feel free to type your question into the chat. If you are joining us on our social media platforms, I am monitoring the comment section, so feel free to type your questions into the comments there as well. Or if you're more comfortable, you can feel free to unmute yourself at the end of the presentation and ask your questions directly of the presenters as well. So let's see. Oh, I didn't introduce our other partners. I do apologize. Our other partners also include Harris Central Appraisal District, Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, the Earl Carl Institute, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Texas Legal Services Center, as well as the newly added Harris County Attorney's Office. So On behalf of the collaboration, again, we want to welcome you all to today's presentation and thank you all for joining us. Ask you to also pay it forward. Share the information, share the video, any of the resources that we provide with members of your community, members of your family, so that they know that there are other options that are out there. And it doesn't do us much good to kind of receive information and not share it and pass it along to other peoples that may find the information to be beneficial as well. So without further ado, I do believe I've covered all of our basics. We're going to go ahead and get right on into our presentation, and we're going to have you guys introduce yourself, and you can get started. So, Sam or Lauren, would you like to introduce Carissa?
Well, I'll start and then I'll pass it on to Sam. How's that? So my name is Lauren Masulo Martin. I'm a staff attorney here with Lone Star Legal Aid. I'm in the Foreclosure Prevention Project. Grateful for this partnership and the opportunity to present. And next you'll hear from Sam.
So I'm Samantha Guzman. I am a paralegal here in our foreclosure prevention project here at Lone Star Legal Aid. I work along with Miss Laura Masulo Martin. And today we are joined by Carissa McNeil, who is our student intern / law clerk for this semester. Carissa, if you want to introduce yourself, go for it.
Yeah, so my name's Chris McNeil. I go to South Texas right now. I'm a 2L, and I've been helping here with the Foreclosure Prevention Project. And I work alongside Miss Lauren Masulo Martin and Miss Samantha Guzman.
You're a 2O. What does that mean? What is
A 2L. So I'm in my second year of law school currently.
Oh, okay. All
Yes,
right. Got
ma'am.
it. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
All
Okay.
right.
So we're gonna start, I believe Miss Carissa is gonna start with our opening slides, and then she'll transition to Lauren when it's her turn. And then I'll be controlling slides, so let me get my screen. Is this good? Oh, how's it looking? Nope, we need to switch.
Swap display. Swap display. The joys of technology.
Is it okay now?
No, ma'am. Click that button and swap.
Okay, let me try this again.
That's all
Okay.
right.
Okay, how about now?
Loaded. Yes, ma'am. You're okay.
Okay. So Carissa, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so this is our presentation on property owners associations. So we're going to be discussing all the truths, the myths, pretty much all that you need to know about POAs. And we can do the next slide. Perfect. We have a few disclaimers. So, as Ms. Murray stated, what you'll be hearing today will be strictly legal information. We're not offering any sort of legal advice. But if you are in need of any legal advice, please contact either your tax advisor, financial advisor, or any attorney with your exact situation. Next slide. Perfect. One more disclaimer. So we have some content in here that might be a little copyrighted, such as pictures or GIFs from like The Office. Just to be clear, Lone Star doesn't own any of these materials, and it's permitted under our fair use codes. Okay. And then our agenda today, so it appears small, but there will be a lot of information. So today we'll just give you some info about Lone Star. We'll discuss POAs, so property owners associations, and what a POA or HOA foreclosure might look like. Okay, our motto here and at Lone Star is simple: justice has no boundaries. We've had that motto, and we've been continued to focus on serving low-income communities since 1948. Lone Star is currently servicing 76 communities in the great state of Texas, and we're focused on ensuring that anyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, has access to justice through legal representation and advice. Next slide. So, big question, who does Lone Star help? The list goes on. We help children, veterans, the LGBTQIA+ community, and those in our community with disabilities, as well as the homeless community. Yet the majority of our clients are women. which are primarily mothers. The isolation we see from our clients that our clients have to face often comes from, limited literacy, language barriers, or living in rural communities. Everyone's story is different and valuable. And on the topic, as we see in the slide, of language barriers, more than 1.5 million people here that we serve speak primarily non-English. So think Spanish, Urdu, French, the list goes on. Part of why our work here at Lone Star is so important is because, as we see, there's only 380 people for every attorney. And that may seem like a lot until you realize that includes non-legal aid attorneys. So as of now, there's roughly one legal aid attorney for every 17,000 people at or below the federal poverty line in our service area. So crazy number. But our focus on rural areas specifically is super critical. Most of our clients in these areas face communication struggles due to their distance from major metropolitan areas. But just to emphasize, 17,000 people for every legal aid attorney. So we're doing the best we can to reach out to everyone that we absolutely can. Next slide. So our mission here is simple. We're here to protect, serve, and advance the civil legal rights of millions of Texans living in poverty. And we do this by providing pro bono, or in other words, free legal services. We do this through representation, advocacy, and community education, all of which is meant to further equal access to justice. Okay, eligibility, super important when discussing who we serve. So Lone Star's focus is on the low-income individuals living in those 76 counties we do serve. More specifically, we focus on civil cases. So Lone Star will not provide free legal services for criminal cases. But once again, we are happy to serve those people in our 76 counties that we do serve. Okay, so substantive law, just to be clear, substantive law is the part of the law that says what people can and cannot do, explains people's rights, responsibilities, what happens if you break the law. In simple terms, it tells you what the rules are and what the consequences are. So a few types of substantive law that we focus on is consumer, employment, family, healthcare, housing, juvenile issues, public education, neighborhood problems, or financial assistance and public benefits. So Lone Star has some special projects that work alongside our previously aforementioned goals and ambitions. I personally work alongside Ms. Guzman and Ms. Masulo on the foreclosure prevention project. As the name suggests, we focus on ensuring our clients who face foreclosure get their goals regarding their housing met. So selling their home, keeping their home, assisting and figuring out next steps, the list goes on. But of course, Lone Star does offer a plethora of projects and opportunities to receive aid. So just to list a few of them, we have the community advocacy, disaster relief, low-income taxpayer unit, medical legal partnership, fair housing, military and veterans, eviction rights to counsel, legal assistance to survivors of sexual assault project. The list goes on. Okay, and then how do you ask for help? Super important when discussing our services. It's really critical to understand how you can actually access those services. So Lone Star is available to call Monday through Friday during our regular business hours, or if you find that getting access to a phone or getting the opportunity to be able to be on the phone in those hours is difficult, we totally understand. So we are available to apply to 7 days a week, 24 hours a day through www.lonestarlegal.org. Okay, so we have multiple branches throughout Texas, hence the serving 76 communities. So we have listed a few of them. These are some of our offices with their addresses and phone numbers. We are facing a little bit of restructuring. So just to be clear, if you have any questions about the closest Lone Star to you, feel free to give us a call, reach out to us. Just make sure to call before you go. Okay, perfect. Make sure follow us on social media. You can get updates and keep up to date with us and our services. Really important to stay connected and get access to those services easier and be able to contact us easier. Okay, and then lastly, we totally understand if you don't have social media. I know social media is kind of a lot nowadays, so you can also keep up with us at lonestarlegal.org. And yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off.
Okay, thank you so much, Krista. That was great. And thank you also for giving our PowerPoint a facelift. Want to give credit where credit's due. So now we'll go into the substantive part of the presentation on understanding what property owners associations are and some of your rights and what to consider when you are living somewhere with a property owners association. So basics. You've seen a lot of or heard a lot of acronyms, perhaps. We're using the term Property Owners Association because there are two types mainly, the HOA, which is Homeowners Association, and COA, which is Condo Association. So those are the terms, and as the umbrella, it's a Property Owners Association. And there are some different laws that apply to both, which we're going to get into. And these are contractually created organizations. They're private, nonprofit organizations that govern themselves, have laws and bylaws, and have rights, and the ability to foreclose, which you'll see as we discuss later. Being in a POA is not voluntary. So you agree to do so. You agree to be part of this property owner association when you purchase your home. There are some communities that have civic associations that are voluntary, but we're talking specifically about the nonprofit entities that are property associations. And next slide, please. So formation. So they start with an articles of incorporation with this, you file with the Secretary of State, and that basically creates the nonprofit, creates the entity and the basic powers and rights. And then going into more details, you get the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. You may hear it called declarations, CC&R, and that goes into more of the details about the powers and rights. Then bylaws are more what can be done in the community, and then rules and regulations more about just everyday what can be done. And we have some pictures that'll show that in a little more detail. And who technically controls the POA is the board of directors. It's a nonprofit, and there will be a board of directors and a head of that board who is able to control the POA. So articles of incorporation, this is just a visual example. This is what's filed with the Secretary of State. It's just several pages, and it's in creating this entity, just making sure that it's been created, and then the laws will be coming after that, or the regulations for that. And then we have the Declaration, Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions, CC&R. It's kind of a lot of words, so we have a little scared cat there, but we're going to try and make it simpler. It's the contract. It's basically a contract, and it creates rules and powers of the association. So the property developer drafts and files it in the deed records, and that's what runs with the land. It's generally just a contract, and it's what the buyer can use the property for. So for example, if it can use it for an Airbnb or not. And here's just a picture of the Declaration of Covenants for one particular POA. And all of the presentation images that we use, these are just random, just ones that we found in the property records. If you go to the next slide, here's an example of some powers that they have. So HOAs have the power to charge what's called assessments. You pay a figure to the property owner association, either annually or monthly, and that is used to maintain the common areas of the community. And they are a lien on the home. A lien that gives the POA the right to foreclose on the home if you haven't paid the assessments and they have gone through and given you notice and so forth. But this runs with the land, meaning it stays with the house. So if you sell the house, the next owner then has that obligation to pay those assessments. And then some more examples. This tells you where the board of directors is authorized. That is found in the CC&Rs. And then here's another example of some powers, the Architectural Control Committee. So you may be in a situation where you want to make some changes or paint your house a certain color or add on a carport or what have you. You usually have to apply and get permission for that if that is in the declarations that they're going to have that Architectural Control Committee that you apply with. Then we move into bylaws, which are used to govern how the day-to-day business more is done. And you can generally find those on the POA's website, if it has one. You can also ask the POA for a copy of them. And this is just an example to start. It gives you the name and some definitions that are going to be used. And if you go to the next slide, see. So it talks more details about the board of directors, like how many years is their term going to be? When are they going to be elected? How can they be removed? So these are going to the actual operations, more granular of how things are going to be done. And many POAs, in addition, have specific rules that govern details like what hours are the pools going to be open, when can you have religious displays. You might find these in the POA's website. You can ask for them. This is yet another document that they may have. And so here's some examples as well that show you how they can set up these rules and regulations for the individuals who live at the property to follow. So for example, like we said, the swimming pool might have its own regulations. And now I think we're up to Sam.
Yay, it's my turn. Okay. So I'm just going to give some more information about, let me move this little thing. So getting more information about your property owner association. Um, so a lot of people come to us and they say, I know my HOA has rules or records, but I don't know where to find them and I don't know what they are. Sometimes it exists and it's just not easy to access. I know when I started here at Lone Star, what the foreclosure prevention project, I didn't even know that HOA websites existed. So let's get into that. So we recommend the first thing that you do is review all the controlling documents. You usually get these at signing when you close on your house. But governing documents are explain how the homeowner association operates. They include things like the declaration, bylaws, and home HOA rules. And these documents outline both the association's authority as well as the homeowner's rights. If you don't receive any information when you're buying your house or moving into an HOA, the next step that you should do is to send a written request asking for those specific records. And written requests are important in Texas because they create a paper trail for you and trigger certain legal obligations that these HOAs have under Texas law. At a minimum, association records should be available for inspection by property owners. It includes the governing documents and many operational or financial records as well. So where your assessments are going, how much money you received and whatnot. The associations are not supposed to withhold everything simply because someone asked questions. So if you have questions, they're there to work for you, not the other way around, in most cases. I mean, they actually do work the other way around. Let me scratch that. But they are there to help you as well. So first and foremost, check to see if they have a website. Many HOAs are required to post documents, notices, and contact information online. So check to see if they do have a website. And just so you know, condo owner associations are governed by the Texas Property Code, chapters 81 and 82. And then your homeowner Associations are governed by Texas Property Code, chapters 202 through 209, so keep that in mind. Condominiums have their own separate rules aside from homes, standalone homes. I love this meme right here because it absolutely does make sense when you're living in a POA. So it's funny to me. Next slide to myself. Oh my gosh. So this is an example of what a homeowner association, I'm gonna say HOA just because that's what I'm used to, but an HOA website will look like. Most people think you'll need special access to access these documents here that they have on their website, but you don't. We typically can find these documents for you if you come to us for assistance. But you'll see here that it says resident login, and that's mostly so you can submit your assessment or penalty payments. But so the first thing you want to do is Google the association's full name, and most times it'll pop up to a website. I recommend typing the subdivision name because sometimes that's what it's named after, followed by words with HOA, POA, or community association. Um, and usually it'll bring up their website or at the very least their management company, which we'll get into a little bit on the next slide. Once you find the website, you want to look for specifically for tabs labeled documents, governing documents, resident resources, or community information. And these sections often contain very important materials like your CCRs or declarations, your bylaws, your amendments, rules and policies, and architectural guidelines. Even if there is a resident login area, again, most of these documents are free to the public or available to the public. Now, if you cannot find a website, again, this is where we're going to talk about management certificates. So this will give you some information about your management certificates. So under Texas law, many homeowners associations are required to file a management certificate, excuse me, with the state. So you think of it as a public information sheet about the association. It'll typically have contact information for the association, the name of the management company, if one exists, a mailing address, as well as any information about the governing documents, and if they're officially recorded in the county property records. This is especially helpful when homeowners say, I don't even know who runs my HOA, or the management certificate can often give you a starting point to find out who runs your who runs your HOA association, sorry. Because oftentimes it is difficult to find out who is actually, in charge. It also confirms whether or not an association is properly registered and who is responsible for communications. So if a Google search doesn't turn up anything or a website doesn't give you answers, this is another tool you can use to find what you're looking for. Again, well, the website is www.hoa.texas.gov/management certificate search. And I will say using this tool, you kind of have to I like to look at a Google map just to find out what's subdivision our clients are living in to navigate this management certificate search tool. So just keep that in mind, what subdivision or what address you are looking for. And sometimes it's not easy to find either. So you gotta play with it and try and find what you're looking for. Again, this is what the website looks like. This is just a random management search that we did for show, but here it has the name, the county, the city, the zip code. And like I said, you do have to play with it. I've tried looking, and sometimes the county, the city, and the zip code pulls up 50 different 50 different results. So you have to kind of know what you're looking for or just play around with it. So next slide for me. So this is an example of a management certificate. It just, has everything, the subdivisions, the recording data and whatnot. So now we're going to talk about property owner association boards and the conducts business of let me restart. So who makes up your property association boards and who conducts business of the association? Oh, sorry, we haven't done one of these since like October, November, and I'm a little rusty. So, who runs your POA board? Many of us don't, many of us assume boards are made up of outside companies who are hired to maintain our neighborhoods or people with special authority, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it is. So the first steps are when a subdivision is newly developed, the initial board members are usually appointed by the property developer, mostly because they don't have residents yet when they first start out. It's not always permanent. It's not usually permanent. In most declarations are or bylaws include provisions that require a transition to home ownership control once certain benchmarks are met. So think when we have 30 homes sold, then it will transition to the homeowners and the initial board members will step back. So at this point, the board members are typically elected by the homeowners themselves, and it is an important perspective shift that elected POA board members are usually volunteers who live in the same neighborhoods. They are usually neighbors, not necessarily legal experts or property professionals. And I will say that I have seen some POAs that the developers never let go of power. Those are few and seldom, but still there are some instances like that. That doesn't mean that mistakes don't happen. Sometimes boards are trying to follow rules without fully understanding them, which can lead to confusion for us as homeowners or inconsistent enforcement as well. So what does a POA board do? So in the short answer, a board can only do what it is authorized to do. Their authority comes from three main places, state law, the recorded declarations or CC&Rs, and the association's bylaws. If something is not allowed under those sources, then the board generally does not have the power to enforce it, even if they believe that it's a good idea. They generally have to stick to the state law, their recorded declarations or CCR's bylaws, and whatnot. It is also important that it's important to remember that homeowners associations don't have unlimited authority. They are constrained to their bylaws again. This is very important because a lot of times we think they're the say all end all be all of our neighborhood, but they're not. You do have your rights. Another point that surprises people living in Texas is that Texas law sets only a minimum requirement for HOA governance, which means they have a minimum requirement that they can control. But in many cases, the legal requirement is simply that the association holds at least one annual meeting for the neighborhood. Everything beyond that, such as the enforcement practices, committees, architectural review processes, usually comes from the governing documents rather than state law. So when disputes arise, one of the first things we look for is not opinions of past practices or past presidents or boards or the neighbors, but is what do the governing documents actually say? This is where your rights are solidified. So just remember that just because the HOA board or president says this is what it's going to be, go back and read your governing documents to ensure that what they're saying is actually the truth and you're not just taking their word for it. So management companies. Oh no, let me go back. So these are who you typically sometimes interact with. In many communities, our POA boards hire a professional management company to handle the day-to-day operations of the association, think billing, receiving payments, maintaining your pool and whatnot. So usually they send things like notices, collecting assessments, maintaining records. Again, like I said, coordinating maintenance, think who mows your esplanades and when you're entering your neighborhood, who keeps up with that, your pool, all of that good stuff. And sometimes they handle violation enforcements and or collections. And I don't mean like collecting your assessments. I mean like when you owe money to your HOA for fines, fees, or assessments that you haven't paid, then the management company is who would enforce the collection of those fees and fines. So again, while the board makes decisions, the management company is often the one carrying those decisions out. So for most homeowners, the management company becomes the primary point of contact, because they're usually who answers the emails when you send emails to your HOA, who sends you letters, and they'll process the payment, which is why sometimes people assume the management company is the HOA, but I've seen where they're two separate and apart entities. Sometimes they communicate, sometimes they don't. But you should know if your HOA does have a management company. Um, So again, it is important to understand that the management company typically works at the direction of the board. They are vendors hired by the association, and they are not the ones in charge. So, and it's very important again to remember this, because when something happens in your neighborhood or you need the help of the HOA, you need to know to address the board and not the management, not just the management company. So, this is scary. More HOAs are coming. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that on the outer skirts of Houston, that more neighborhoods are being built. And according to the Community Associations Institute, community associations are expected to become one of the dominant forms of housing in the United States by around 2040. Um, it's not stopping. All these new developments, for whatever reason, feel like the HOA is the way to go. So in other words, more and more people are purchasing homes. You will automatically be living in communities governed by POAs. We're already seeing this across Texas, especially in newer developments, like I said, because the HOAs are being built into the structure of the neighborhood from the beginning. Uh, So just be prepared that it's not a rare thing of the past. It's becoming the standard norm. This is census data from 2009 to 2022. You can see here that the number of houses in HOAs have grown significantly within those years. Here's another slide. This is a new single family houses sold slide. You can see from again 2009 to 2022, where the number of houses has substantially increased under HOAs. It's kind of scary, but just remember you do have your rights. There are available to you as part of your rights. So keep that in mind. And so this is just, I like this one too, because why are HOAs the way that they are? They don't have to be, but they are. I mean, I know they're here for our good, but sometimes not so much. And for example, here in this slide, this is an article we like to use. Basically, the article is that a Cypress HOA sued a retired couple after neighbors complained that they were feeding the ducks in their neighborhood. They said that the ducks caused property damage and sanitation issues, which I can understand. And the association decided to go after the homeowners and sue them in court, asking for legal fees and relief listed up to about 250K, raising the possibility of foreclosure. So this couple who decided to feed the ducks, which, a lot of us would think to do, some of us not so, would find themselves in court almost losing their home to a foreclosure because they were feeding the ducks. This case drew national attention as an example of how homeowner associations enforcement actions can escalate into legal and financial consequences for our homeowners. Sometimes with us losing our home, the final thing is us losing our home. Again, here's another article about it. So what happened after this? So they went to court. I think this is another one. Anyways, so they hired a pest control company to remove the ducks in this article. And so who did they hire? What did the company do? They use air rifles to get at these ducks and to chase them away. Which is not something you want to see in your neighborhood. I know I don't. I'd rather take the ducks than seeing somebody using air rifles or seeing people in my neighborhood with rifles going after these ducks. You don't always know that they're air rifles. Anyways, so this is one way that the HOA decided was the best way to get rid of these invasive ducks. So again, HOA controversy, even when they're addressing these real problems, because apparently these ducks are invasive, it can create conflict when communication and transparency are lacking. They could have said, hey, I know we have invasive ducks. Any ideas are appreciated about how we can get rid of them. They didn't have to, hire this pest control company to come with their airsoft rifles and try and get rid of the duckies. Okay, so this is another article too about ducks. We live in the South, it's warm, they love it here. So in Pearland, the officials have warned residents not to feed the Muscovy ducks. They are an invasive species, and they explain that HOAs and property owners could legally remove or destroy them under certain rules, which is good because here we talk about communication and transparency. So they've told them from the beginning, don't feed the ducks. And just so you know, the HOAs or POAs could legally remove the ducks or destroy them following certain rules. So that's clear communication and transparency. However, this announcement sparked confusion and controversy, illustrating how HOA authority, city regulations, and neighborhood expectations can collide, even over something so simple as feeding the ducks. So just think about that when you're living in your HOA. So here's another example about how this is an example about how your homeowner association can protect you as a homeowner from outside factors. Here in Conroe, the HOA sued the Thunder Gun Range because residents were claiming that stray bullets from the gun range were hitting their homes and vehicles. I don't know that they have concluded that lawsuit yet, but what they said was that the gun range failed to maintain adequate safety measures to prohibit bullets from going into this neighborhood and damaging homes and vehicles. We won't get too much into that because that's not our lawsuit, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but they're not, HOAs are not always bad. This is one example of where they are here to protect you, the homeowner, and your safety. So some common issues and abusive POA practices. So up until this point, we talked about how they can help you and what they're there for and how you find out information about your HOAs. But let's talk about how they're structured and how they're supposed to function. So this is where we start to talk about what we commonly see when things start to go wrong in your HOA. So one of the personal categories is personal disputes. Sometimes enforcement begins because we have neighbors bringing complaints against other neighbors or conflicts that escalate into formal violations. What starts as a disagreement between neighbors can quickly become an official HOA matter. This is not what they're here for. HOAs are not to settle your personal disputes. They're just there to maintain the neighborhood and make sure everything looks good and is good safety wise. Another issue that we see is coercive settlement negotiations. Sometimes homeowners may feel pressure to agree to payments or conditions that they don't fully understand because they are worried about fines, lawsuits, or losing their home. If you ever are facing past due settlements, fines, fees, and you don't know where to go and you need you want information, you can always apply to Lone Star Legal Aid for assistance, and we may be able to provide you with the information that you are looking for, or at the very least, point you in the right direction. So if you're ever facing that, just, apply to us. We also frequently see problems related to debt collection activities. HOAs, I'm not going to touch too much on this because Miss Lauren is going to discuss what happens when we get to that point. But just know that they can send you letters. Pay attention to those letters. Don't ignore those letters. Reach out to your management company, reach out to your board if you need questions answered about those letters, but don't ignore them because this could be the time when they're starting to tell you, hey, you owe us money, we're coming for your house. And then finally, there's general dysfunction and mismanagement. It happens. We don't like to think that our HOA boards will mismanage funds or, be dysfunctional, but sometimes they are. You have to weed out your bad apples to get to where you need to be on the good side. But sometimes our boards and our management companies misunderstand their authority. They apply rules inconsistently or fail to follow required procedures. Even when there's no bad intent, poor management can still create serious consequences for you, the homeowner. So it's not always going to be perfect, but follow the rules of your bylaws and whatnot, and ensure that you're attending your HOA meetings to make sure that the board is also following those rules. So our next slide. So some more common issues and abusive POA practices can include so what this slide focuses on is what escalation actually looks like once an HOA dispute moves into the legal process. One of the biggest challenges homeowners face is paperwork and deadlines. I know, sometimes I miss my deadlines. Um, but once attorneys become involved, homeowners may start receiving formal letters, demands for records, or legal notices requiring them to respond within very specific timeframes. So again, don't ignore these letters that you're receiving from your board or your management company. And usually when you start to receive letters from the attorney's offices, it's getting serious and you don't want to ignore those. If you have questions understanding them, you can always apply for our services and we can, read you through them and help you out, but don't ignore those because it's getting real serious at that point. Oftentimes this can include a request for documents or information. It's what we call legal discovery, and many homeowners don't realize that ignoring these notices can make the situation much worse. So when they start sending you those letters, I know a lot of times, and I stress this, and I seem like on repeat mode, but I see it all the time in the work that we do here. People get these letters, they feel overwhelmed because it is overwhelming when you owe a debt and you just don't know where this money is going to come from, or you didn't know, or you forgot. Don't ignore it because it just makes the problem much worse. And then at the same time, while you're ignoring these problems, your expenses can increase very quickly because you have your late fees. And every time the attorney's office sends you a letter, that's another fee that's getting tacked onto your bill. So you don't want to ignore them. Even if you have to contact the attorney's office on your own, just say, hey, what's this about? They can call, but you can also call us for assistance. So again, when I said the expenses can increase very quickly, you can start at a small balance, just maybe your unpaid annual assessments or fines. But again, once you start adding attorney's fees, collection fees, and administrative fees, because every time they send you a letter, they're tacking that fee on, and court expenses, because most HOA foreclosures are judicial. So there will be court expenses, but all of that is added to your account. So you'll end up with starting at $500 for your annual assessment. And when you don't pay it, it just starts accumulating. And the next thing you know, you owe $14,000 and it just started at $500. So please do not ignore any of these letters that your HOA or their management company or the lawyers are sending you. So for many families, it's not the original violation or the original missed assessment that creates the risk. It's the accumulation of the fees over time. So keep that in mind because they will charge you for every letter they send you. And again, I know I'm being repetitive, but I see it every day and it gets out of hand really, really fast. So property owner challenges, disputes with your POAs. At this point, it's important to acknowledge something we see over and over again. It's HOA disputes are rarely just about rules or paperwork. These situations often become very emotional because they involve our home, they involve our investment, they involve where our kids sleep at night, where we sleep at night. It's where we feel the most safe and it's most personal to us. I don't know about you, but my walls in my home are filled with pictures of my family. You know, that's where all my favorite stuff is. Um, so it does become emotional. Disputes with the POAs can turn hostile quickly. I've seen a lot of stories where the HOA board just doesn't like a certain person just because they exist. Um, and those things can turn hostile quickly. And again, they start with a small issue, but they can create tension between your neighbors, frustration with the boards or management companies, and a feeling of being targeted or unheard. So keep that in mind. And it's understandable. I see it all the time here too, where, we feel like we're not being heard and we feel like we're being targeted by our HOA board and management companies. It's understandable. But when you feel that the peace or stability of your home is being threatened, it's natural to respond strongly. You may feel anxious, angry, or overwhelmed, especially when legal language, deadlines, or financial pressure are involved. But again, sometimes you get these letters and you don't know what they mean. Seek assistance. Come to Lone Star Legal Aid. Apply online at www.lonestarlegal.org. Ask for help. And I know, we are like, don't talk to the other attorneys, but call the management company, call the attorneys listed on the letters that they're sending you and ask questions. Because this is your home. This is what, you worked so hard for. And you don't have to lose it just because you owe $500 that you couldn't pay at the beginning of the year. Um, so part of what we try to do here at Lone Star Legal Aid is slow things down and help people move from the emotional reaction of, oh my God, I'm going to lose my house because I couldn't afford the $500 at the beginning of the year. And I say 500 as an example, it's not set in stone. But they come to us so we can give them an informed response. And that's why I say, come to Lone Star Legal Aid, apply for our services. If you qualify, we can help you navigate that process and give you some information that might help you take a breather and, you can relax and breathe out and say, okay, now I have the tools I need. Let me work on resolving this issue. Um, and just keep that in mind that we're here. And this is what I mean. I love this little GIF. But when you fall behind on payments, you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to hide from them whenever they come knocking on my door. When I receive a letter, I'm just going to toss it out of sight, out of mind. It's out of your sight, out of your mind, but it's still there. And then when they come knocking, hey, we're here for your home. What are you going to do? So don't wait until they're coming for your home to reach out to us because you're not doing yourself or us any favors. Come to us in the beginning. That way we can stop it before it escalates and before those fees tag on. And I say this so much because I'm about to end my slides. But before I do, let me give you another case study about property owner associations board abuse. In Houston, Texas, the board of a condominium owners association may have been abusing its powers and in the process forced out fellow condo owners. So this is what the story was about. So, like I said, it often starts small, again, maybe with the missed assessment payment, a violation notice, or a disagreement about a rule. Um, you'll receive your reminders notice or violation letters at this stage. It's usually easy to resolve, right? Yes. Okay. So If the balance isn't paid or dispute continues, the account may be sent to the management company or collection agent's attorney. And this is where your fees start to accumulate and appear. You receive a demand letter. Well, how did I do this? I think, oh no.
I think you're up
I
to
switched my talking points. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this slide, this is a case study from Houston, and it shows how the HOA authority can have very serious real world consequences. In this specific situation, our condo owners filed a lawsuit against their HOA board after a series of major disputes involving foreclosures, large special assessments, and ongoing management concerns. The residents alleged that the decisions made by the board placed significant financial pressure on homeowners, including large assessments, which are your annual fees, that some residents could not afford. As the balances grew, some owners ultimately faced foreclosure actions tied to the HOA debts. What made this particular situation difficult is that even when the homeowners believed that the board was acting improperly, the state law gave limited options to challenge those decisions quickly or effectively. So it kind of felt to them that the state was protecting them. But this highlights an important reality that the HOA power is often built into governing documents and property law, which means disputes can become legally complex very fast. But in this case, for many residents, the issue wasn't just disagreement with the board. It became a housing stability issue affecting whether they could remain in their homes or whether their homes were going to be taken from them in a foreclosure sale. I think that last part I'm going to give to Lauren because I think she's going to
No
touch on that. But
problem.
just remember that we're here to help you. I'm going to sign off on my part saying contact us when you start getting these letters, or even if you haven't gotten this any letters from your HOA, if you know that you haven't made your annual assessment this year and you're not going to be able to because everything's expensive now, you may be on a fixed income, reach out to Lone Star Legal Aid for assistance. We might not be able to represent you, in court, but we can give you some tools and some information and some how-tos or what you need to know about HOAs to help you before it gets to court, because you don't want those fees on your account. We've seen it here all the time where it's a few $100s, and then the next thing you know, you owe $14,000, and it's overwhelming. Don't ignore those letters. Um, Remember we're here to help, or at the very least, provide you with guidance on how to navigate your situation and resolve it on your own. So I'll hand it over to Lauren.
Sorry, I'm just responding to some questions here. So thank you, Sam, for all that detailed information. And I did want to kind of revisit something to make sure I made it clear. So the board members are actually your neighbors. The board members are elected. You have the right to vote as the members of the community, and the board members are your neighbors. So the neighbors that you have want to make sure that the community is taken care of. People may have different opinions on that and what it looks like, but keep in mind that these board members are your neighbors. So the meetings of the board are public, so you can go to the actual meetings, have your voice heard, talk with your neighbors, talk with your community members, talk with your management company before it escalates to the point where you're approaching foreclosure. So I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned. And let's see. So we had a slide on foreclosures in general. So in general, foreclosures in Texas are the first Tuesday of every month. And a notice once the entity that's foreclosing has been given the authority to foreclose, they just have to send a letter 21 days before the foreclosure sale. Don't even have to prove that the individual received it. And then they can foreclose the first Tuesday of each month. In Texas, foreclosures can come from, for example, homeowners associations, mortgages, property tax liens. There are extra protections for homesteads, and then additional things that can foreclose if it's not a homestead. A lien, also to be clear, is an entity has the right to get its money from you for something, and that is secured by an object, a piece of property, a house here. So, for example, if you owe a mortgage and you haven't paid the mortgage, they have the right, if they follow all the right processes, and we have a separate session on that, to foreclose in order to satisfy what's not paid in the mortgage. And the same is true for taxes, and the same is true for these homeowner association liens. The assessments that have to be paid, those are going towards the community maintenance and everything. And so that's why they would have the right to foreclose based on those not being paid. We're going to talk about that in a little more detail. If you want to skip ahead to, yes, perfect. So the POA probably has a lien on your home. I think we've only seen one case so far where they didn't have the lien language in the declarations. So they generally have a lien against your home to enforce it by foreclosing. Same with the condo associations. Now, let's see, next one. Wait, skip ahead to POAs can only foreclose if you owe maintenance fees. There you are. So there are different types of fees. What's called maintenance assessments. Maintenance assessments are the ones that are used to take care of the community. You may have common sprinklers, or you may retain a service to mow the lawn, etc. And those are the costs that you're obligated to pay either annually or monthly. Any of those unpaid fees and any attorney's fees or collection fees that are solely associated with the maintenance assessments are the fees that are secured on the land that will allow the entity to foreclose. There are also other types of fees, and for example, if you've left debris out and the HOA has noticed you and assessed fines against you, they can sue you, they can get a judgment to where they could collect from you, but they can't actually foreclose on the home for those types of fees. It's only for these unpaid maintenance fees. And once you pay, there's an order that they're required to apply any payments you make first to these maintenance fees. So again, they can't foreclose because you didn't put your trash can and take it out at the right time, or you painted your house the wrong color. They can still fine you. They can still sue you. They just can't foreclose for those. It's those assessments that are the key to foreclosure. There's two different types of ways that types of foreclosures. So the first is the homeowners association for subdivision style homes. So as the image there shows, so those homes are generally separated. You may have some circumstances where there's townhomes that share like one wall, but for the most part, they're separate, independent, standing alone houses. Condo associations are generally where they're all connected. You may see some communities that used to be an apartment complex and then they were converted into a condo, or they were built that way all at once. Those have a different way of foreclosing usually. And so for HOAs, the homeowner association, either itself or through its management company, must send a pre-collection letter informing the homeowner of the debt owed and the 45-day right to cure. Right to cure means, hey, you're behind, you owe this much, you have 45 days to pay to cure this problem. And then if you don't do so, they have to file a lawsuit and get a judgment from a court saying, yes, you're allowed to foreclose. And in that lawsuit, they have to show what they think you owe, and you have the right to also show what you think you owe. So maybe you're behind a little bit, but you've made payments, you think your ledger is incorrect. You have that opportunity when you're in the lawsuit. But then ultimately, if they prove that you do owe these assessments, a judge can sign an order giving the HOA the right to proceed with the foreclosure. And then once the HOA gets the proper documents from the court, files those in the property records, and gives you notice, it's just 21 days before they can foreclose the first Tuesday of a month. Now, condo owners associations can follow what's called non-judicial foreclosure. So judicial foreclosure, judge is involved, the HOA lawsuit. The non-judicial foreclosure, non-judge, is basically where they send you a notice by certified mail that you have to pay, and then if you don't do so, they can schedule you for a foreclosure sale with 21 days notice. There's a few that have the requirement in their paperwork to file a foreclosure. They always have file a suit. They always have the option, but most of them are able to foreclose without a lawsuit. Now, Texas does have something very unique for HOA foreclosures and also for tax foreclosures. The specifics are different for each, but which is something called the right to redeem, meaning get your property back after a foreclosure has happened. And it's not an option with mortgages, just as an FYI. So on the one hand, once the foreclosure has gone through, you have the right to redeem or get your property back. There are some challenges to it, but we're going to talk about that. So you get 180 days, so that's only 6 months, to redeem or pay off to get your property back after an HOA foreclosure auction. And it's the start of that time is actually when they send you a letter letting you know that your home has been foreclosed, but make the assumption they're sending it the same day they foreclose, if not the next day. So you have 180 days from that. Now, even shorter is condo owners associations. Those you have only 90 days from the day that they send you the notice. In order to redeem, you have to pay back the buyer all the stuff that they paid, basically. So whatever assessments you were behind, whatever additional fees, and you have to track them down and be able to do that or bring additional legal action to try and assert your rights. Also, they're allowed to evict you during your redemption period. So keep that in mind as well. So the first thing, one thing to mention is before there's actually a foreclosure, again, try talking with your neighbors, try talking with the board members, try talking with the management company, sending emails, trying to negotiate before the home is foreclosed. But then other options might be, if you qualify, talk to a lawyer. You may have the option to pay a file for bankruptcy and pay your assessments over time through that way. There may be other legal solutions, so keep that in mind. But ultimately, if you do have the property sold at a foreclosure auction, it'll either be purchased by a third party, somebody who just comes to the auction and uh, purchases, or actually the POA is allowed to bid as well and basically say that now it's taking title. And again, whoever buys it has the right to evict you during the process if you haven't redeemed or even if you're still in your period to redeem. So in order to evict, you've unfortunately gotten to that point, the new buyer does have to serve you with an eviction notice and for 3 days notice, and then they will have to file an eviction lawsuit in the local justice of the peace court. They first have to have a constable try to serve you, but if the constable isn't able to reach you, they can even get a court order to just send you paperwork. So make sure that you're watching your mail and everything in the event that you have been foreclosed on. And then once that's occurred, a trial will be held before the Justice of the Peace. And evictions are really an expedited process in Texas, so they can really happen pretty pretty quickly. So within a matter of weeks, you can be served and have a hearing. You do have the right to appeal to the county court at law if you are not satisfied with your decision of your judge. Maybe you feel like you had a defense or something there, the notice wasn't correct, what have you. You can also, typically you have to pay a bond, a dollar amount to be able to appeal. There is something called the Statement of Inability to Afford Court Cost. You can get that off of Texas Law Help. TexasLawHelp.org is a great website where there's legal resources for all sorts of civil issues. And that statement of inability to afford court costs is there. Now, there have been some changes to the eviction rules effective the 1st of this year. So definitely make sure you're following additional rules or get legal advice when you get to that point. So we've, at this point, hopefully taken you through how is a HOA or POA formed, what powers do they have, what are some pros and cons of living there, and then what happens if you're foreclosed upon. I think we are concluded with our materials here. Again, you can reach us at lonestarlegal.org, and I'll go ahead and say our phone number in case anyone's listening and not able to see it on our slides. It's 713-652-0077. Again, 713-652-0077 or lonestarlegal.org. And now we can ask for questions.
Okay. There were a couple of questions that were in the chat,
Yeah.
but I did see that you did answer them, but I did want to go over those aloud because
Yeah.
that was a pretty good question. One, I just want to reiterate again or to explain that we do send out a copy of the recording, the Zoom recording, as well as a link to the presentation on our YouTube channels so that you can go back and watch the presentation again. Any references or resources that were referenced throughout the presentation, we do make that available and send that out to you all as well. But the actual slides itself, we do not share the slides. But there was a question here. Are there any protections for veterans against HOA fines and late fee penalties?
Yes, and a follow-up question about what if they're deployed. So,
Yes.
Mr. Warner, thank you for that question. So first, I want to mention that we have a military veterans legal services unit that specifically serves veterans. So I want to point out that I can confer with them and see if they know any additional resources that I'm not aware of. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking if the veteran or anyone is disabled, there may be a reasonable accommodation option to try and, see if they will work with you. There are special protections under the Service Members Civil Relief Act if somebody is deployed. But I would definitely love the opportunity to kind of research a little more and get back with you in the event that there's other resources that I just don't know of off the top of my head.
Okay. All right, that was that. I had a question, and I recall this from one of the previous presentations, but I don't remember what the answer was. What if you're going through this dispute with a POA and they start the process of foreclosure, but you still have a mortgage? So what happens in that instance?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I have an answer, and there's a whole lot of confusion. But so if you have a mortgage, first of all, the mortgage has a lien on your property. It has a secured lien that it can foreclose, and it has what's called a priority lien in Texas over the HOA, meaning if it's foreclosed, they get paid first. The HOA also has a lien as well. Now, generally, when you're paying your mortgage, you're paying an escrow as well. And the escrow is that you're paying for the property taxes and the homeowner's insurance a little bit every month. But almost always you're not paying for the HOA. So I have seen times where there's confusion and the person thinks it's being paid in escrow and it's not. They're required to pay separately. And times where the mortgage doesn't realize that there's an HOA issue. And so they're moving along without assuming that there's a problem. But eventually, not paying your HOA, technically, that's a term of your deed of trust for your mortgage. You're required to keep up with the HOA that's generally in there. And so you also become in default on your mortgage. And so once the HOA starts to foreclose, or the mortgage can also come in and say that you've defaulted on that. So the mechanics are different in each, case, but it is an interesting intersection. I don't know if that answers your question.
So that if the mortgage company decides that could the mortgage company step in and decide to pay whatever it is that, and then force it back on the homeowner?
That's
You
a
know what I
very
mean?
good question. So they absolutely do that with taxes and insurance. And you wind up when you're behind on taxes and insurance, you don't get, sued by the taxes. You get a default notice from your mortgage as a general
Mm-hmm.
practical matter. I believe they could do the same for the HOA. The issue is because the mortgages have servicing departments, and there's actually a person going to check and see, is your insurance still active? Checking the tax office website, have you paid your taxes? They're not always doing that with the HOA, at least from what I've observed in my experience. So if they find out about it, my suspicion is they would pay, but if they haven't found out about it, you may still be able to be negotiating it on the side.
Hmm. Okay. Um, and I don't see any other questions here in the chat, and I don't see any that were emailed to me prior. Um, but my own, not my personal question, but I've seen a lot of circumstances as well where uh, the biggest disputes come in addition to the neighbors, um, weather related, storm related issues, when the fences go down, when trees are falling, or, you know, and they instantly send you a notice saying, hey, you only have X amount of days to pay to get this fence put back up, or to pay to get this tree removed or something like that. And I don't know about y'all, or tree service or tree removal service and the fencing is expensive.
Expensive.
It is
Uh-huh.
not cheap at
And
all.
and
So
take a while after a disaster if everybody needs it.
exactly. So what do homeowners do in that situation where it's like, I've had all these other issues going on with my house. I don't have the finances to pay to get a tree removed or to put up a brand new fence, because they may also still be in dispute with their insurance company, or
Mhm.
over what's going to be paid or what's going to be covered. What do homeowners do in that situation?
That's a very good question, and it's a good example of where what's the law and what's just plain practical probably overlap. But and I could see situations where perhaps the damage is done to the community that's supposed to be getting paid by the assessments, and the issue is, why is my HOA or POA not fixing it? And then also the one where you're, like you described, getting the letters. Um, the basic thing that occurs to me is that starting with trying to communicate, open lines of communication, making sure you've told your HOA and your management company and stuff, I'm working on it. If you've gotten letters from your insurance showing that you've applied and they're considering your appeal or whatever, keeping that open line of communication. If they proceed with a lawsuit, then you have even more time. Okay, you've added fees now, but you've got even more time to try and negotiate, see if they get mediation, what have you. And then also, they can't foreclose as long as you continue to pay the assessments, not any fines related to not having the home repaired. Um, so I would argue, if it's at all possible, start with negotiating, open communication, making sure they know you're working on it. Do whatever little bit you can do. Like, is there any little portion you can clean up leaves or whatever? And then, you know, um, go from there.
And then is there something, or is it only regulated by what's in the bylaws, what the HOA fees are supposed to cover? Because I've seen, and I'm talking personal here now, where they charge you for every little thing. You have to pay for the pool tax. You have to pay for the trash. You have to pay for this. You have to pay for that. But I'm still paying annual fees. Why am I paying all of these extra things? What does my HOA fee,
Yeah.
my annual fee that keeps going up, by the way. What does
Yeah,
it
I
cover if I
agree.
still have to pay for everything else?
That's a good point. So, like you said, I think you knew the answer that I could think of, which was reading the bylaws and reading the CCNRs and all that and seeing what they've included in there. Um, so, and I see another question. I'll get to that in a moment. So that's what I would agree that that's what needs to be covered. And you're correct. It's going up. Everything's going up. But Mr. Warner again asked, should homeowners attend the HOA meetings and what is the benefits? Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that question because I think it dovetails with what Ms. Murray just asked. Yes, first of all, you're informed as what's going on. I had, until I started doing this work, I had no idea what a good HOA I have. The board members are reasonable and nice. They send us accountings. They welcome us to the meetings and tell us when they're going to be. Um, and you can ask for an accounting, ask for, oh, you're saying that the water bill is X amount. In our particular case, the water is community wide. Why is it cost that? You say that the trash is costing this much. We had the opportunity to vote and say, okay, trash pickup used to be twice a week. Now we want it once a week because it's not covered by the city, and that's another story. To reduce costs, we're going to how often is the lawn service going to come? Do they have to come every single week? Can they come every other week? And in our community, they come more often in the summer than in the winter so that you can lower that cost. Is it time to search for a new company? What other creative solutions are there? For example, they're looking at when as trees, pass away, die, whatever you want to say, they're going to replace them with trees that are more native and don't require as much water to use water. All of these solutions, from what I've seen, have come from people going to the meetings, people talking with the community members, and of course, being lucky to have a board that is open to those decisions.
I've I've seen this on a lot of subdivisions, which I've still don't understand. It just completely baffles me. I know that with a lot of subdivisions now that they're requiring a certain number of trees to be in the front yard or whatever.
Oh,
Otherwise, but why do they put the trees so close to the driveways where the roots are going to grow underneath and then tear up the driveway? I've never understood that. Uh,
I'm not sure either. I'm sorry if I don't. If a tree was provided by the builder dies, is it the responsible of the owner or the HOA? Um, I it's going to depend, but I think it's if it's on your personal property, then you have to make sure the landscaping meets, and if it's in the community, then it's going to be covered by the assessments. That's what I believe would be the case. But again, I would read the bylaws and everything.
oh, another expensive item.
Yeah, it is.
Oh
Um,
goodness. Okay. I believe that's all. Oh no, I did have one more question. What happens? And I ask these questions because I think of all this stuff, and I don't mean to put you guys on the spot. But what happens if you got a tenant that's renting a house where there's an HOA and they're not aware of penalties or what the bylaws are or what the regulations or whatever should be. And they may potentially be getting foreclosed on because of a homeowner. What
yeah.
does a tenant do? Or even vice versa, where the homeowner didn't know that the tenant is creating all these various violations or whatever, and now in jeopardy of being foreclosed on. And what do they do in those kinds of
Oh,
situations?
wow. Well, that's another law and practical intersection, but I'll give you my long-winded answer. So first, if from the perspective of if the tenant is the one that's causing the issues, first of all, the landlord should have provided the tenant with all of the laws and bylaws and things that they're supposed to require, and it should be ideally a term of their lease that they're going to follow those. For example, you can only put your trash out after X o'clock or whatever. That should be incorporated into the lease theoretically. Um, and that's part of being in communication with everyone, because if you see that your neighbor tenant is doing things, at least that you know of, that are causing a problem, you can find out who the owner is and make sure it's reported to the owner of the house, because ultimately they're the ones who are obligated. Um, Theoretically, that if the tenant isn't following the right requirements, then the owner is getting those notices, accruing fees, and should be trying to evict the tenant as a breach of the lease, because part of the lease was that they should follow the rules. On the flip side, if the tenant's doing everything right and for some reason the landlord isn't doing some owner, like for example, pocketing the money that should be going to assessments. If you're a tenant, you may be getting notices in the mail. You may or may not. They may have it as a mailing address elsewhere, so you may not know. I'll have to look into a little bit more, but there is a Protecting Tenants After Foreclosure Act that if you're current on your rent, you have a little bit more time to move if you were current after foreclosure. I don't want to give the precision about that. So there might be some minor protections, but you're going to be the tenant there thinking, I've paid all my rent. Why are these investors knocking on my door? What have you. So it could be an interesting condition, but I would definitely say that's a great time to contact legal aid.
Okay. And now that's all my questions. I don't have anything else.
Okay. I may be out of answers. So is there any other questions?
I don't see anything else, and I don't see anything on our social media page either. So I believe that is it.
I have a question.
Oh,
Yes,
hello.
yes. Uh-huh.
Sorry. I moved into my subdivision probably like 20 years ago. It was being built, and we have over 700 and some homes. My question is, when does the HOA become basically the homeowners thing instead of the builders? When does it, I thought after you got so many homes in the subdivision, then it carries over to the community, who is like the homeowners association. And it's not like that. It's still being managed by what was set
Builder.
up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good question. So my first answer, getting some feedback. My first answer is contact legal aid, because we can't provide one-on-one legal advice to your specific information and request here. As a general practical matter, the board is initially appointed by the builder, and then once their terms run out, they're supposed to start getting replaced by the members of the community. So I would say, reach out and see if something can be researched, and also looking at your bylaws and such to see if there's anything else governing it.
Okay. And I think you might have covered this, but the last thing is that you were talking like these B&Bs or whatever it is, community. Is that something that's initially in the bylaws, that whether they can have that or not, or how does that work?
Good question. So it may or may not be, especially if it was a older community, but they can be amended. You can have amended bylaws, which is another reason, going to Mr. Warner's question, to go to the meeting. So if you're having trouble, bring it up, and maybe they can consider amending them so that they can be changed.
So don't they generally have to have a quorum of so many homeowners in that subdivision to actually make any those kinds of amendments, though?
Yeah, yes, you're correct. They have to have a certain quorum, a certain number of people to be able to vote and so forth. But again, that's for attending.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a little bit more in the condos where my dad was living. They amended their bylaws to do no short-term leases or no short-term rentals are allowed. That includes Airbnbs and things like that. So it's prohibited there.
Yeah.
Is there a way of finding out how many are in your community? Don't they have to, if there's nothing in it that says that they can't, is there a way to find out how many Airbnbs are in your community?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, you could contact Airbnb directly.
Yeah.
That's just off the top of my head.
Aside from just doing a search for a particular area, I don't think there is like a listing. It's not like an MLS site where you can see all the houses that are available for sale. I don't know that a list like that exists.
Yeah.
Because you may have your Airbnb listed this one month and it may not be listed or available next month. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hit and miss.
Yeah, I think that's just something that it would be nice if it was in the laws, that it had to be known, because if somebody moves into a community, you may not want, and you find out that there's all these Airbnbs, um, they're not maintained well. People are having, they have them in, they have parties, they're disrupting the community.
Mhm.
Want to know why, after all this time, since they become so popular, that they're not giving regulations as to how many you can have, and that people who want to buy a home in a subdivision don't know until you've moved in that it's not really what is it, owner occupied.
Yes, good point. Owner occupied. And that could be tenants or it could be Airbnb. Just another thought, if they are causing problems and noises and mess, you can report that so that that can be, the owner can be notified and, they could be told that it's in violation of the bylaws.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a way that you can kind of regulate owner occupancy versus having a tenant, because you get investors that buy properties for the purpose of renting, not necessarily short-term rentals, but and then we had one of our someone that actually purchased a house from our organization or a while back, that she was a traveling nurse and she didn't know how long her job was going to have her traveling. So instead of her paying for her mortgage and not living there, she did a short-term rental. She made it an Airbnb to keep it occupied, to kind of have somebody to keep up with the maintenance and all that. So then when she's back at home, she at least now has a place to live as opposed to renting somewhere else. But I don't know that there's a way to regulate owner occupancy versus tenants.
Okay.
Yeah, these are great
Is there?
policy questions. I'm not.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was a question. Is there a way that that you can regulate
I,
owner occupancy versus tenant?
I could look into it. I'd hate to offer an
Yeah, I
well,
understand that for these special situations like the nurse issue, but when you hand your property over to a renter in a community where you hope it's mostly owner occupied, it becomes really hard because some people don't take the responsibility. And if it's more of a short term, 6 months or something, I can see that. I just think that um, I believe that when you own your home more, you're more responsible. But people who come in as renters, they're not always as responsible. Um, yeah, that's my only question. My only issue.
and
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, Mr. Warner's has an answer in the
He says
chat.
it's yes if it's in your HOA declaration.
Yeah. Okay.
So read that boring piece of paper that you sign
Yeah,
about your HOA, that umpteen thousand page book that they may
yeah,
or may not give you, that you have to download and look at all the details.
yeah. And then,
Uh,
yeah, attending your meetings to say you want
And then
it
attending the meetings.
amended
Yes.
to add that. So thank you.
If you are a tenant occupant, is it good for somebody to request a copy of the bylaws for the subdivision if they haven't been provided with one, so that they'll know what they're getting into as a tenant?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
Is it a good idea for a tenant if they're renting a house in a subdivision that has an HOA to request a copy of the bylaws if they haven't been provided with one?
Yes.
Certainly, yeah, ask your landlord, see if it's online, for sure. And then Mr. Warner mentions, and I just didn't point it out, all amendments. So they'll make sure they don't just give you the initial bylaws, but if there's been amendments and to any of these instruments.
Yeah.
well,
Good
thank
deal.
you.
Oh, you're welcome. Was there anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, we will be back with the second part of our foreclosure series in April. So March, had to do my math here, February, March, April. So it'll be April the 4th Thursday in April, which will be April the 23rd. And that one's going to be the property tax foreclosure. I believe it is that we're going to do
Yeah.
that And then following that will be the mortgage foreclosures, where we get into the reverse mortgages and things like that. I want to just kind of give a quick plug. Neighborhood Recovery is going to be hosting our Transfer on Death Deed Clinic coming up on March the 11th. It's a great alternative to having a will and helping protecting your homestead or your homes or your property without having to go through the probate process. We are offering that service at no charge on March the 11th. Is going to be a two-part kind of a series where you're going to be listening to an attorney talk about the benefits of having a TOD, what it's for, how it protects you, how do you fill the document out. And then the second part of that will be an actual execution where we're going to have the opportunity for you to sit and talk with volunteer attorneys to have them review your TOD, have it notarized for you, and then get it filed for those that the filing fee will be covered for those that do income qualify. So if you don't have a will done yet to protect your home, then at least make sure that you have this kind of an alternative put in place to help with preserving your assets in case, in the event of your untimely death or incapacity. So we want to make sure that you guys protect your assets as best as possible. So that is a service that we will be offering, and I'll include that in the email when I send that out. Next week, we've got part of our Money, Health, and Wealth Financial Capability series where we're talking about budgeting and getting control of your paycheck and how to not live beyond your paycheck by creating various budgets. We partner with Family Houston to provide that information and get you access to financial coaches that can assist you in that endeavor as well. So there's a couple other things that we've got that are coming up next month, but I'll also include that in the email that I send out. If there are any other questions that you all may have, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know, and I'll definitely make sure that your question gets forwarded along to the presenters here with Lone Star Legal Aid. We do definitely, again, encourage you to reach out and to apply for this service if you do, again, find yourself in need of any civil legal assistance. What else is there? Is there anything else that I'm forgetting? I don't believe so. But again, we want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much, Lauren and Sam, for your presentation, and Miss Carissa. And your semester, is she only here for this semester until the end of?
Yeah, so I'll be here until the end of this semester.
The end of this semester.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you at the next presentation at least, but the best of luck to you
Thank you.
on your future endeavors as well. So there will be a quick link that pops up on the screen. If we can get you guys to just answer our quick survey, let us know, how the presentation went for you. If you received the information that you intended when you signed up for today, if there are any presentations or topics or areas of interest that are important to you, that are impacting your community, that are impacting your family, please let us know so that we can also take that into account as we're planning our future presentations. So we want to, again, get as much information out to the community and resources that we possibly can. So just take a minute to fill out that survey. You all have a wonderful remainder of your day. You all take care of yourselves and you stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.